Okay, we'll go ahead and call to order our regular meeting. Okay, we'll go ahead and go to open meeting. We have a roll call. Victoria Newport. Here. Jeremy Olson.
Here.
Valerie Pena Hernandez. Here. David Seymour.
Present.
Jeff Hallgren. Samantha McDavid.
Present.
Sarah Moses. Present. Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, first on the agenda is a public health hearing on the fiscal year 2020-21 budget. It is recommended that the Board of Education move to open the public hearing on the financial year 2020 to 2021 budget. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Jeremy Olson. Jeremy Olson.
Yes. There we go.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
David Seymour.
Yes.
Samantha McDavid.
Yes.
Sarah Moses. Yes. Victoria Newport. Yes.
This is an opportunity for the public to ask make any comments regarding the annual budget. The tentative budget has been published for over 30 days, and now it's an opportunity for the public to make any comment regarding the annual budget for FY21. Absent no public comment, you can close the public hearing.
Okay. Closing the public hearing of financial year 2020-2021 budget. It is recommended that the Board of Education move to close the public hearing on the financial year 2020-2021 budget. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Roll call. Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
David Seymour.
Yes.
Samantha McDavid.
Yes.
Sarah Moses. Yes. Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Jeremy Olson.
Yes.
Okay, next is public participation and recognition. Public comment. Please see Board Policy 2-230 handout available at the meeting. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete a request card or may send an email to the board president, sarah.moses@d428.org, prior to the meeting. Members of the public may also participate by using the meeting link located on the agenda. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Criticism of individuals is not in order. Okay, and first we have Tim Bray. Bry.
Just there's a lot of feedback, just so you know. We're sitting out here trying to listen to you guys. Can I get started? I'd like to thank all of you for the opportunity to share my concerns. My name is Tim Bry, and I've been a special education teacher at St. Charles East High School for almost 20 years. I am the father of Timothy Bry, a student in the SOUL program at DeKalb High School. My son Tim is on the autism spectrum. As a result of his diagnosis, Tim requires an individualized education plan to address challenges to the educational process caused by his medical diagnosis. The IEP is a legally binding agreement between District 428 and the Bry family. District 428 has violated this document. Tim has suffered significant cognitive regression due to the failure of School District 428 to properly execute his IEP during remote learning. Specific service minutes violations quantify the magnitude of professional negligence. These include speech and language, social work, occupational therapy, and instructional aid, and the Soul Minutes programs themselves, totaling over 2,500 minutes per week. It is imperative that Tim and his classmates return to the classroom and resume face-to-face learning as soon as possible. Their lives depend on it. Students on the spectrum struggle with social interactions, especially making eye contact. Remote learning requires intense, lengthy eye contact, resulting in computer sessions that are often traumatizing and abruptly terminated when the sensory input becomes impossible to endure. Remote learning is not an effective method for these students. Synchronous or asynchronous instruction delivered via Chromebook has never been a part of the SOUL curriculum. How then is it possible that District 428 can assume that the SOUL students will thrive in remote learning environment? Area school districts have successfully prioritized and returned SOUL students to in-person learning at the high school level. With the class size below 15 students, social distancing and other medically recommended protocols should be attainable. Surrounding communities have opened their school, dentists are seeing patients, elective surgeries are taking place, and many of you are probably going to the grocery store. Why do I have to ask you to please teach my son? It appears that District 428 has elected to ignore a vulnerable segment of their student population, and I challenge you to do better. While no one anticipated the devastation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, I am here tonight to ask you to please reopen your schools and fulfill your obligation. If it is not possible to return all students, please reinstate face-to-face instruction for special education students. I do not have the time, money, or desire to go through a lengthy due process. Tim does not have the time to endure that. Every day that goes by, Tim and his classmates fall farther and farther behind their peers. Teachers of SOUL students are anxious to return to the classroom. And I question why School District 428 is reluctant to facilitate this effort. I challenge you to please act quickly. The situation is critical. Lost instructional time will never be recovered. Please return special education students to the classroom and fulfill your responsibility to provide a free and equal public education to the students of District 428. As a reminder, I found that I believe your mission statement is DeKalb Community 428 is to prepare students to reach their potential as their full potential as lifelong learners. I don't know that that's happening. Thank you.
Next is Katie Ferris. And she's going to talk about in-person.
and I are both working professionals, and we have 3 children in District 428, a 5th grader, a kindergartner, and a 3rd grader named Gabe. Gabe has autism, and he's enrolled in the SOL program at Jefferson Elementary. We rely on the school district for multiple supports that we cannot get anywhere else. There are 10 different professionals that my husband and I work with on a regular basis to support our son, Gabe, the majority of which comes from this school district. The complex network is critical not only to support Gabe educationally, but emotionally and functionally as well. We have spent years building a team around Gabe, and last year he was really starting to blossom. Then it was all quickly taken away. 6 months ago, we were cut off at the knees, and all of our son's supports vanished, and Gabe went into regression. Skills that took literally years to develop have disappeared. To say my husband and I are frustrated is an understatement. As parents, we are at a breaking point. Our frustration lies in the fact that the school district has turned its back on our son. Gabe's supports have disappeared, and the school district placed an incredible burden on us parents to fill in the gaps. I can help my 5th grader with her math, and I can guide my kindergartner through her online class, but I cannot be my son's special education teacher or his speech or occupational therapist. These are specialties that my husband and I, despite our best efforts, cannot replicate. Like seeing an eye doctor or a dentist, specialties like OT and speech is not something that a parent can adequately implement, nor should they. And the telehealth platform has proven to be an unsuccessful method of implementing these services. The unfortunate part with e-learning is that it's become a one-size-fits-all approach. And for a child like Gabe, this is unacceptable. Under Individuals with Disability Education Act, my son has a right to a free and appropriate public education. Under the current e-learning curriculum, I would argue that this is not the case. He does not have access to his general education class, nor does he have music, art, or PE. We haven't been able to implement his speech or occupational therapy for 6 months now. My son has a 30-page IEP plan that has been reduced down to a 3-page remote learning plan. It was implemented last spring as an effort to triage goals and reduce skill regression, but this is not to be a replacement for a legal binding IEP document. There is talk of special education classes resuming in person. For students like my son, this is critical. He's gone 6 months without proper support, and we desperately need his support staff back in place. But it's critical for my son to go back. It is just as critical that it is done safely and following CDC guidelines. Teachers and staff need proper resources to do their jobs safely and to keep their students safe. I implore you to reach out and to listen to those that will be working in the classrooms. As Gabe's parents, it is our job to advocate for him. Despite best efforts from teaching staff, the current e-learning program is an inappropriate learning environment for kids like my son. I have reached out to teachers, principals, upper-level special education support staff. No one has a viable e-learning solution. We must get these kids back in school, back to their educators, and equip them with the tools to be safe and successful. Other school districts like Sycamore have already brought their special education departments back in person. Why is DeKalb District 428 done this?
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is board correspondence. Does anyone have correspondence to share? Okay, next is the consent agenda. Approval.
Pull off item 8, the contracted services for psychological services, and we're fortunate to be able to locate the psychologist that we were with the rest of the employment. we'd like consent agenda approved with the removal of item H.
I cannot hear Griff.
Griff, you're muted.
There you go.
Well, I was saying item H is going to be removed from the consent agenda. It's for a contract for psychological services, and we've been able to identify a psychologist that the district will hire directly, rather than through a contracted service, which is always our preference.
Okay, so, motion to approve consent agenda items A through G.
Correct.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
David Seymour.
Yes.
Samantha McDavid.
Yes.
Sarah Moses.
Yes.
Victoria Newport. Yes. Jeremy Olson.
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez. No.
Okay, next is superintendent's report and presentations.
At this point, we would like representatives of Rain Associates to come forward. Sarah Abadi, you want to do the introduction?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good evening. You can see on there, Ray and Associates, and we'd like to bring you up to speed. The agenda that I have here this evening, if I can have that next slide, please. Our task this evening is to review and finalize the search timeline, and it also includes a tentative interview day, and we're going to talk very briefly about the focus groups and the community forum finding. We will talk about the 33 quality assessments, and then we will review and approve the advertising flyer, and also review and approve the position description. So that's what we're going to be going through this evening. Documents that you should have. The next slide, please. You should have a draft of the timeline, a draft of the flyer, the survey results that were taken in English, Spanish, and Arabic, the 33 characteristics explanation document, the 33 quality summary document, as well as the data Excel sheet, as well as translated comments that were taken by people. So, the first thing that we need to accomplish this evening is approval of a timeline. And you do have in your packet of information an actual timeline, but the first item that needs to be brought to our attention is a semifinal meeting on Monday, November the 30th. If I may have the next slide, please. We really need to come to some kind of a decision as to the time on November the 30th. And it's my understanding that you all may have been discussing the potential time for that. And then the interviews will be the week of December the 7th. And that's when we're going to need a considerable amount of time from you and the availability of the board. And then the final interviews the week of December the 14th, which right now, we can plan on those interviews being all virtual, hybrid, or in person, depending upon what's going to happen here in the next 30 days or 60 days. But my question to you, Sarah, is as the board, do you have a time that would be available to begin the semi-final meeting on November the 30th?
You just need a time during the day on November 30th?
Anytime.
Okay, as a board, so what works for people on November 30th?
Anything after 4 or 4 o'clock, 3:45 and on I'm available.
Okay.
Evenings are better for me.
So anything after 4? Did you say something, David?
Said evenings are better for me.
Evening? Okay.
What's the expected duration of the meeting?
I'd say a couple hours, at least.
Okay.
So would 5:30 work for people? 5:30 to 7:30? Sam?
That should work for me.
Okay. Victoria?
Yep, that would be okay.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Val?
Yes.
Okay. David?
Yes.
I will probably still be remote, by the way, because I don't have clearance from my doctor to be in person.
Okay.
If I could, this is Ryan Ray, president of Ray & Associates. How are you all tonight?
Doing okay. How are you, Ryan?
Great, great. And we're talking about the presentation of candidates meeting, correct, Bob?
Yes.
Yeah, so what I would say normally is that meeting can last up to 4 hours. You need to be cognizant of that. So you are reviewing not only paperwork, but you're also reviewing videos of the candidates as well. In fact, normally what we do tell people is that you need to go ahead and probably have some kind of food for the board to go ahead and eat during this time, whether it be lunch or pizza in the evening. So it could last up to 4 hours. I just want you to know that while you're planning.
Okay, so maybe we should move the time a little earlier. Do we want to do 4:30? Does that work for people?
I don't know if it matters, Sarah, but nobody in the audience, I don't think, can hear what he just said if you want to recap it.
Oh, sure. Okay, so Ryan Ray, the president of Ray & Associates, just came on to let us know that meeting can last up to 4 hours. So we need to consider that when planning our time. So considering that, board members, would you be willing to move the meeting to an earlier start at 4:30?
I can do it.
Okay. Are there any objections? Okay, 4:30 on November 30th.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
The next item on the agenda is a summary of the focus groups and the community forums. And if I could have the next slide, please. We held 6 focus groups, and we had a makeup opportunity. The focus groups consisted of cabinet members, students, parents, and reps from PTO, building principals, faculty, staff, and community members. And we had over 70 individuals who participated in those focus groups. We also had available to the community 2 open forums on early in the morning and early in the evening. Next slide, please. As we went through all of the focus groups, there were some general themes that came out and were loud and clear. And these are not necessarily in any rank order, but the overriding theme is the diversity of our community, the diversity of our district, and that there is a tremendous commitment to address that diversity, and there is a commitment to improve equality and inclusion within the community as well as in the district. The other thing was an individual who has some experience in leading a large district towards goals, has demonstrated a strong and tangible leadership in past positions. Past positions were extremely important. And then also promote a positive and collaborative district and climate. There are a lot of good things that go on in this district, and people are proud of this district, and people would just like to accentuate the positiveness of what goes on in this district. Strong communications, obviously an individual who has student first approach to being a superintendent of schools, and also an individual who has experiences with the creation and implementation of board goals, strategic plan, things of that nature. Also, without saying, an individual who has high standards, has tremendous integrity, and models those kinds of things within the community, and also an individual who maintains a presence within the district and the community at large. One of the themes that came through was a desire of individuals to have this person coming in as your superintendent to reside in the district. So, are there any questions on your part regarding some of the themes that we came through on the focus groups? If not, I'll keep going. All right, next slide, please. The 33 qualities survey. Wow, we had 453 participants. It was done in English, in Spanish, and Arabic. And as a result of that, and you have in your background information a chart, which is the rankings of the recommendations of those 33. It's really difficult for people to look at those 33 items and be forced to come up with only 10, because all 33 of them are excellent criteria. But if you have that chart in front of you, you will notice some similarities between various items. First of all, the similarity, can't speak this evening, between you as a board in selecting them and what was the outcome. I think there was only maybe one or two items different between what you as a board had indicated than what was the final ranking. And then if you look at the consultants' recommendations, you'll notice that those recommendations, those items that are being recommended to you, are pretty much in sync, except for maybe one, and we've combined some of them that indicate, people are thinking their priorities are pretty similar in those kinds of recommendations. Next slide, please. Out of that came about 11 different profile items. One is a candidate that possesses an excellent people skills and presents a positive image of the district. Again, I stress the idea of presenting a positive image of the district in the community and is able to listen to all of the constituents within the community. Leadership skills, being able to respond to the opportunities and the challenges that lay before you as a board and as a district. Also to be highly tuned to the cultural and diversity of the community. Again, trust, self-confidence, and high standards of integrity are extremely important to the people who answered that survey. Strong communications, being able to speak, listen, and write, and to be able to communicate. The old saying is you communicate, and then you also communicate. Has the ability and experience in maintaining excellence for a staff, for the district and the schools. Is strongly committed again to the idea of student-first philosophy in all of the decisions that are made, and be able to increase student performance, especially in identifying and closing gaps that may appear in student achievement. Another important criteria is make recommendations and decisions that are data-driven. That's extremely important. And again, a positive and professional environment for the district and the board. And then a profound commitment to the experience of dealing with all gender, races, and socioeconomic groups. Those, ladies and gentlemen, are the items that came out of that survey. In addition to that survey, you also have comments, and I think you have in your background information all of the comments, but may I have the next slide, please? Here is just a sample of the comments. Having gone through all the comments myself, I can tell you that you should be very proud of your community and be very proud of your school district. There is a lot of positive comments about what is going on in the district, the educational opportunities for the students. And so it was very, very nice to be able to see those kinds of comments. So I will stop. And are there any questions that you might have regarding the focus groups or the 33 quality survey items that we have?
I have a question, and it actually leads into the next part of your presentation, the approval of the flyer. In the 33 criteria, the last one that you have, and I know it's listed on the flyer as well, if we could just, I didn't catch it when I looked at it before, but the commitment to an experience dealing with all genders, races, socioeconomic groups, I just feel like it's a little bit, it's not very strength-based, it's very negative in its view of dealing with, and if we could just change the wording a little bit. I understand what it's trying to convey, and I agree with it. I just really hate the wording dealing with. It makes it sound like a problem rather than a strength or an opportunity.
Samantha, if you want to go ahead and get with Sarah on that, we can go ahead and change it to whatever kind of wording you want.
Yeah, we will work on that between now and tomorrow morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item is the approval of the flyer, and you have a copy of the flyer, or the 428, and we will make the correction on the flyer that you requested. But we've also included the values that you have for an incoming superintendent, and also for all the other pertinent information that's going to go out tomorrow. Starting tomorrow, we will be actively recruiting that. Do you have any other comments or opinions or feelings regarding the flyer? There's a lot of orange there. That's good. Okay. The last item that we need to really talk about is the approval of the position description, which is kind of already in the flyer, but if we need to change it, we can certainly change that. But you have a description of DeKalb, the school district, and the discussion of nature.
And then, Bob,
Yes.
that I have also received several phone calls, both personally and through the office, of individuals that are interested in the position. One of which is an assistant superintendent of the Council of Great City Schools. So that's exciting news, and we're looking forward to going ahead and recruiting for this position. But I know Bob's already been starting and doing that for you.
So, are there any other questions?
I do. I have a question. I have a question in terms of the process. So I was on the board when Victoria, Def, and I were on the board when we had our last superintendent search. And the focus group situation, I think, was handled very differently. So I'm very excited about how this was done. But I do have another question in terms of the process for how we narrow down and how we actually interview. So my question is, we as a board are going to narrow down the applicants, correct? Well, I have two questions. I have two questions, so I just want to go ahead and get them done. And then the second one is, how will the process look once we narrow it down? Are other individuals going to be a part of that process, or is it just the board?
The board will be solely responsible for narrowing it down, or as we present, let's say 10, 12, 8 candidates to you, you as a board will narrow those down to, let's say, 3 or 4. And then, and we will have a process for you to go through to narrow those candidates down. It's called a matrix, and we'll go through it with you, and it will help facilitate that process. Once you get the 3 or 4 final candidates down, the next thing that you as a board need to discuss is how you're going to involve the stakeholders in an interview process down the road. And then you as a board will meet those finalists for one interview, and then narrow it down to maybe 2 and have a second interview. I don't know if I've answered your question or not, but that's kind of a Reader's Digest survey or survey of what we're going to be doing.
Okay, thank you.
If there's nothing else, thank you very much for having me here this evening. We will keep you apprised of all the things that happen between now and the time we get together to review candidates. So again, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, so next up is benefit renewal rates, plan year 2021, Deetra Salas, Ben Sloniker, and Doug Fredericks of DLR Insurance Solutions.
I don't know, can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay. Yep. Okay, so I am here. Okay. Sorry about that delay. We do have Doug here from DLR, and he is going to talk about our rate renewals for the upcoming calendar year and share what those results are based on our current carrier and then other bids that came through. So give us just a moment.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you for allowing us to work with the school district on your benefit package. We worked hand in hand with the HR department in order to find the best benefits for the price for the district. This year has been very interesting, to say the least, with COVID. The insurance company's actuaries are not counting any claims after February, the end of February, as credible. And the reason they're not doing that is because elective surgeries were held off, office visits were held, your dental, vision appointments, a lot of folks had trouble getting those. A lot of telemedicine was used. So when we talk about this renewal, we're talking about the claims data that was basically during the 2019 plan year and the first 2 months of 2020. So I know time is valuable. I'm going to hit the highlights. Inside your board packet is a presentation we put together, again, with the help of the HR department. Where have we been and where are we going? 3 years ago, we had a 0 rate increase. Last year was 4.6. This year, Blue Cross Blue Shield started off at 17.2%. Through negotiations, we were able to get them down to 9.4%. In doing so, we need to renew the dental with them, as well as move the basic life from Voya to Blue Cross. They're giving a 1% discount in the medical insurance, which is about $100,000 for the dental and another $100,000 for the life insurance that greatly pays for those benefits. So why are we at such a high rate increase when we've been doing so well for the last few years? The main reason is we had a 156.3% increase in our inpatient, 69.8% in our outpatient. Our ER visits went up 49.9%. And again, if you have any questions during any of this, please let me know. 3.95% of the plan membership have high dollar claims. That means that they have claims in excess of $50,000. We have 42 of them this year. The year before, we had half as many. They equated, again, for over $5 million in paid claims. Our pharmacy went up. Specialty drugs went up 100%. So these are the reasons why our benefits have gone up so much here. Medical trend for 2021 is 7%. So based on the actual plan experience at DeKalb, a 9.4% rate increase is not out of line. And you know me, I wish I walked in here and told you there was no rate increase. The dental insurance, actually, it's a miracle, but Blue Cross Blue Shield gave us a 2.8% reduction in our dental premiums. So every little bit helps. Does anybody have any questions about why we're where we're at right now? Teacher, do you have anything else to add to the presentation? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You're looking for action for the board at early October board meeting, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
I do have a quick question for Deidre.
Oh, hang on. Val's got a question
For Deidre.
Oh, for Deidre.
Uh-huh.
Oh, sorry.
Regarding this. So, Deidre, based on our, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
Deidre, so based on our last contract negotiation, with this increase going up, where does that leave the district in terms of that?
So it does have a financial increase in the cost of the medical insurance. It is a decrease in the dental insurance, and there is an increase in the life insurance for the district. However, that increase is offset with the being able to have the 9.4% versus the higher rate with Blue Cross Blue Shield. I'm going to ask Brian if you could go to the last slide, please. No, the very last of the whole deck. One more. Right there, stop. So here we have some information that's inside of your, inside of the board packet. It's after the page that says thank you by DLR, and it's broken down by each employee group and what the impact would be. There is an impact, and it does depend on which coverage employees have selected compared to the collective bargaining agreement for that particular group. Is that answering your question, Val?
Deidre, yes, I saw that, and I wanted clarity. Just, I guess you know how the media always loves to put out a narrative, so I wanted us to have that clarification, kind of emphasized, so that we have the correct narrative out there.
That is correct, and that's why we included this slide, because we this is tentative, depending on approval, but we wanted to do some calculations to see how much it would impact employees based upon the current collective bargaining agreements. And these are the results for each group. And Brian, could you go ahead one more slide? And then here it outlines the cost impact for our unaffiliated groups.
So as long as we're discussing this, I'm assuming that the coverages that we've given here are negotiated in our agreement with the union?
That is correct.
Right.
Through each contract, through each collective bargaining agreement.
So all of the, I guess, inclusions, if you will, the fact that it's a PPO and all that kind of stuff, that's all pre-negotiated with them. And you guys are really just brokering and farming that out, right? So
that is correct.
Okay.
Yep. The one thing Doug did share with us is that Blue Cross Blue Shield was not open to any plan design changes because of the nature of what has all happened with COVID and what period of time they're considering. So we had to keep our plans the same as they were in this current year.
Okay.
May I ask a question? And maybe Cindy would know better, but is this within where you were thinking, Cindy?
It's higher than what we have originally had in our budget. We had a 5% increase in the budget. And I have, for our budget presentation tonight, adjusted those numbers to reflect the 9.4%. And actually, the increase for our 21 budget is really only half of that because it's a calendar year 21, not the entire fiscal year.
Well, that's good to know.
It's included in the budget approved.
Mm-hmm. Or what they will be approving, right?
Oh, you will approve.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you all. Okay, next up we have First Student Incorporated Contract Amendment. This will be Miss Cindy Carpenter.
And I'm going to introduce Liddell Cass, who's here from First Student. He's the area manager, I believe that's the correct title for First Student. And he's just going to, I had shared with you some information in your board packet regarding a request from First Student. And so he's going to go through that, his request for transportation. And First Student provides our transportation for the district, for all our pupils. There you go.
Good evening. My name is Liddell Cass. I'm Area General Manager for First Student that represents this portion of Northern Illinois. The DeKalb location is one of 10 of the facilities that I support. Jason Calloway is the location manager with whom you guys work regularly and probably know much better. Similar to the conversation I had with the district in the spring, what we're seeking right now is to try to negotiate some sort of compensation through the shutdown. Our contract that we have with the district, like most of the contracts that we have with school districts, are all built around movement, not stoppage. So we've built all of our costs that are our fixed costs of operation into our daily rates for the school year. What I presented to Cindy are several options as part of this conversation. The DeKalb School District is the sole contract that we have at our DeKalb facility, so it's really about us trying to work with this district to figure out how we support this facility. I had presented several scenarios. The basic scenario was to achieve fixed cost compensation for the regular routes for the regular school year. That's about 40% of our daily bus revenue. The secondary idea, which you guys supported us at in the spring, was at an 85% value, which did allow us to also pay drivers. We do think, as far as at some point, we're assuming that we're resuming services, and our preference is where we can get to those agreements because that allows us to better retain and interact with our population. Otherwise, we're assuming that they're sustaining somehow, perhaps through unemployment or some other means, and that they're going to come back to us when it's time for us to wake up again. And there's a lot of risk in that. No support is technically an option, and in those circumstances, especially at a facility where we only have one contract, we would have to shutter much of that facility for as long as we could to save cost as we approached restart. We are a large company. There is, we are trying to support, all of the contracts and shutdowns we have. However, we do treat each facility as an individual unit financially, similar to how a chain of box stores often treats one of its stores. There is a blended scenario that I also presented to Cindy, which I think is probably could be a fair compromise with our individual circumstance in DeKalb. We do have a driver shortage at this point, and it's grown through the shutdown. We were negotiating with our union prior to the pandemic. Back then, we already had seen driver shortage forming, mostly around the very low unemployment that was out there. And then things shut down. So we've grown approximately a net of about 20, loss of about 20 drivers during the shutdown. So as it sits right now, we are hiring, we're recruiting, we're gearing up for a restart at some point. But if we came and said, we were going to try to get compensation at an 85% value to support driver pay, we don't have all the people for the seats that we need at this point. So a scenario that I presented that might be a compromise would be to bill only routes that had scheduled drivers available and then fall back to a fixed cost scenario for anything that was uncovered. I know that as part of our initial agreement, there was language that also allowed support of any sort of incentives that came available to us. So if at any time we start to get some bailout money, there's a mechanism for that to flow back to the district. The one thing that was in the agreement that we do know is forthcoming is because we were able to pay drivers to wait and not work at that point, we should get some tax value back from the federal government. So sometime in November, we will be having some sort of conversation and we'll have some dollars that we'll be crediting back to the district. I just don't know what that value is yet. So if we did negotiate any terms at this point, it would have to be built into a legal agreement between us since our primary contract does not support stoppage. So it's kind of I don't have statistics or dollar values to present tonight. I just wanted to talk through the general idea, and I knew much of this group was familiar with what we talked about in the spring. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I feel like I'm the question lady today. I'm sorry. So I have a question in terms of the transportation. And my question is, does First Student, given that, our students are in the e-learning or remote learning format, and we do have students who we haven't necessarily been able to connect with, and they need additional supports, and I know YSB is offering that. I've seen it promoted on social media. So have there been conversations of transporting kids to other facilities? Is that even a possibility, or no?
Are you speaking to outplaced students, or
No, not outplacement or anything like that. It's more so utilizing our transportation to support the kids that, you know, are at risk and maybe need help in terms of internet or a facility to support them through the remote learning piece, which YSD is offering that and has partnered with our district. But my question is do we have the ability to transport students, I guess, to utilize transportation at this point, you know, in that regard?
And I guess it would depend on those scenarios. We do have some transportation occurring to some outplaced facilities, but as well as we have and I think I mentioned at the last meeting too, we are using the transportation to get supplies to special education students. I think those go out, that's like every 2 weeks. So, I mean, if there's unique situations that we have the capacity to work on and create those routes, we'll look at those. And of course, as we get closer to when we can get in person, then some of those specialized things may need to peel back just because there's just not going to be that capacity based on routes. But definitely if there's a need out there, First Student's been very responsive and willing to work with us in special situations. So we can, you know, pretty much get the drivers on the road.
Cindy, or actually whoever, I feel like when is my mic on? I think
Yes.
Okay. So I feel like when we did the 85% agreement in spring, we discussed that was actually some state money that was supporting that, or was there money coming to us in order for us to do that, or was it?
What happens is we do receive reimbursement from the state on an annual basis. It's always a year in arrears, so we submit a transportation claim after the end of every fiscal year, and we do get some monies back from the state. Each year, the state determines how much that'll be, and for us, it's usually about 65 to 70% of our cost, give or take, depending on prorations and those types of things. So long as the state will continue to support those transportation reimbursements, then we do get that back. And it is required that we do have agreements like we did have in the spring, and if we do another one now, those need to be documented properly in order to continue to receive the transportation reimbursement. And look, there was a webinar today where the state did say that they're going to actually up that reimbursement a little bit just because they didn't have to spend as much, because there was a lot of districts doing very similar to what we did. But we didn't have to expend 100% because we didn't have transportation or students in classrooms.
So you said it was a year in the rears.
Yes.
And the 85% that we did in the spring, is that on track to be reimbursed then?
Yeah, but not the entire 85%. It'll be like 70% of the 85%, because we never get 100%.
Okay.
Basically. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Okay. That's helpful. We aren't voting on this, are we?
No, this is just informational tonight. We just wanted to, you know, let y'all know that we'll be working with Liddell, with First Student, and at the next board meeting, we'd like to have an agreement kind of put together. We've already talked with our attorneys and started, you know, actually Liddell did share a document that they're working on with another district, which looks pretty similar to what we may want to do. So we're really right now in negotiations and trying to figure out a plan that'll work for both of us.
I know
to be able to get, you know, kids back in classrooms when we're ready.
I know Cindy has talked to you about an in-person arrangement starting the second quarter, which is like October 26th.
Yes.
If we had a modified hybrid, which would include a and B schedule for K-5 and some a minimal 6-12 in-person activity, would you have the staffing to be able to accommodate us?
That's a conversation that Cindy and I did have. So at this point, we've gotten good at covering shortages in the last 2 years because of the economic boom. We have several markets for some reason that we've been able to hire regardless of the economic boom. So locally, Belvedere is one of my facilities. We've had a surplus of around 40 drivers at one point where we've shipped them out across the country. So we've built our own model as a company to be able to cover ourselves and ensure service during that time. Right now, if we had to resume service here, I would be pulling from Belvedere drivers at our cost. So it's going to be, it would be extra pay and time every day while we dug out of the hole. I think one of the things that we're having a hard time with right now is where we don't have work for our employees, pay for our employees, we're having a hard time recruiting to fill those seats. Because, I can do a part-time job somewhere else where I'm guaranteed hours out of the gate versus one that takes 30 days at least of training, and I might not have work at the end of that 30 days. So that's where we would start. We, as a company, we did negotiate with our union through the pandemic and raised our starting rate significantly, plus some other benefits that were thrown in. Because of where things are in the wide world, though, we're not sure what the impact of that will be until really things start to move again. We've brought in our recruiters from our region. So we have people who just do those things for our company. So we had someone here on and off over the last few weeks working with Jason and his team to really ramp up recruiting, make sure we're getting out the message. And I do think the more the district talks about returning to in-person learning, that's going to help us because people will come to us knowing that there's going to be movement again. We are part-time work, but our pay rates, we're starting at $17 an hour now. Our pay rate versus other part-time work available, often we're several dollars higher with some convenient schedules that work around family and other dynamics.
So your answer is a qualified yes?
Yes, we could resume service, but I wanted to be transparent and make sure you understood what that would really look like.
Okay.
So the plan is to, again, like I said, at the next board meeting, we've got some time. I think we have an extra week, which is kind of nice to have one of those, a little extra time to work in an agreement and to work with Liddell and his group to come up with a plan that will be, works for both of us and be able to get us back to school.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I really do hope next time I see you all, we're moving fully again.
Thanks, Liddell.
Okay, next up is the fiscal year 2020 and 2021 budget adoption, Ms. Cindy Carpenter. This is an action item.
Just waiting for the presentation to come up.
Sure. Okay,
so you can go to the next slide, Brian. So just briefly, real quick, the budget process timeline, we've seen this before. So we've gone through our whole process here, have had the budget on display for 30 days, was published in the paper, and now we're at the part of the process where we adopt the budget. We had our hearing, obviously, earlier in the board meeting. So the next slide, please, is a list of the changes that we've made to our tentative budget, which we originally presented on August 4th. So if you can go to the next slide, Brian. Okay. So the changes we've had to revenue, at our last board meeting, the board approved a student fee waiver. So we had to remove that revenue out of the budget. So that was about $739,000 less revenue that we're budgeting for. And then also reduced our local revenue for interest earnings. Interest rates are not what they were. We were finally getting to a place where rates were getting a little higher for our investments, and now we're kind of back down to lower. So we did adjust the budget for potentially for lower interest rate environment. On the expenditure side, we did have some increased expenditures related to COVID-19, which is not unusual for all districts or any business out there. So there's various things. We had rental of storage containers to get more space in our classrooms, additional compensation for driver's education for behind-the-wheel instruction to make up for some lost time that happened in the spring, potentially some thermal scanners or additional thermometers, depending on which route we go, and then some instructional software as well, so an additional expenditure of about $145,000. We just talked about our increase in health insurance costs, and so for the 2021 calendar year, which for our fiscal year is just half the year, it's about a $200,000 increase. And then at the last morning, there was the board meeting, we had the approval of our director of planning, so we were anticipating that person might start sometime in January, maybe a little at half of that budget, about $60,000. And also, I adjusted our beginning fund balances for our preliminary 1920 financial results. So next page. So here's a summary of where we're at with those adjustments, and I'll focus on our surplus and deficit. So for our operating funds, you can see that with these adjustments, prior to these adjustments, we were at about $1 million surplus, and with the adjustments I just mentioned, we're at about a $232,000 deficit for the fiscal year. If you look at that fund transfer, that's $313,000. That's related to the property tax relief grant and the abatement that we will be doing when we do our tax levy coming up fairly soon. So we're looking at an adjusted deficit, operating deficits of about $546,000. Honestly, considering everything going on, kind of see that as a break even considering the magnitude of our budget. Although again, anything can change, we know that. So we're looking at an estimated operating fund balance of about 40.5% of expenditures, which is well within our fund balance policy of 20 to 30%. Next page. And then here, just another quick summary, historically where we've been. This chart you're fairly used to seeing, and you can see, basically we're trying to keep our fund balance within that policy range, and we've been doing pretty well. We actually went up a bit, and then we did, if you remember back last year, use $10 million. Part of that $15 million you see in transfers for the preliminary 2020 is the $10 million we used from working cash to pay down some debt. So that there was that transfer, plus the additional $5 million that we did for the property tax relief grant. $4.7 million was funded by the state, and that other $313,000 the district took out of their operating funds. So again, just a quick history of where we're at and where our revenues and expenditures have been, where we've been able to maintain our fund balance at a good level historically for the last few years. Actually, since 2013 on, we've been increasing fund balance. Next slide. So this is a very similar slide that I show, again, other budget considerations. We may have more expenditures related to COVID-19. It's really tough to know what those look like. And maybe additional revenues. Again, they're still working on some stimulus at the federal level. Just don't know what that's going to look like. Again, state budget considerations, like we were just talking about transportation reimbursement and also evidence-based funding, what that might look like in the future. But at the time when we did the tentative budget, the state owed us $1.4 million from last fiscal year. We did receive most of those dollars. I have that in red in caps because that's awesome. We received those dollars in August. So we're really only owed about $24,000 from the previous fiscal year, which is pretty good. Back in March, we were not feeling very confident about some of the what the cash flow was going to look like, so it was good to see those dollars come in. And again, if there's any change in the property tax cap, right now with the election going on, I don't anticipate a lot of changes, but who knows what might be happening in the spring, and as well as the TRS pension obligation that is always kind of lingering out there, and there hasn't been any resolution on that yet. So that is our fiscal 21 budget.
So,
Question? No? Okay.
so we're basically looking at we're operating at a $600,000 loss, essentially.
Yeah, without the transfer, yes. With the transfer as well, yes.
Which is basically accountable for just waiving all the fees last time.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay. It is recommended the Board of Education adopt the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Samantha McDavid.
Yes.
Sarah Moses.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Jeremy Olson.
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
David Seymour.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Okay, next is item E. The subject is opening the school year 2021 update. Superintendent Griff Powell.
I'd like to begin by just giving a shout out. Mary Ann Bueller, last day of employment with this district was today. She has spent 26 years servicing our district, and so we wish her all well, and today was her last day. Now, our number one priority for reentry is for the low incidence special ed students. We're looking at a target date of October 12th for early childhood, DC, SOL, and the 18 to 21-year-old students. Again, this is a target date of October 12th. Furthermore, we're looking at October 26th for an in-person modified hybrid, which specifically would be an A-B schedule for K-5. Now, the priorities, again, would be our low incidence special ed, as I just specified. Of course, the English language learners, our at-risk students, and our primary. K-5 is a modified approach, but K-2 is definitely a focus group that we're going to put our full attention to. Again, our target date is October 26th. Again, this depends on the conditions that we're dealing with during the next 3 or 4 weeks, a little over a month to the in-person approach with a modified hybrid. In terms of issues that we're currently dealing with, we have had 8 positive cases from our employees. 7 of 1,000 employees tested positive, 1 student teacher. We've had 3 students out of over 6,000 students test positive during the last 2 months. I called Cindy Graves. I gave her the numbers, and I said, how would you characterize our situation? And her remark was low risk. I would not make any other statement other than those are the numbers that we're currently dealing with. We fully intend to move towards, continue to move towards in-person, and setting our first target date of October 12th. Just one other remark in terms of our trending of attendance with our e-learning. We are continually trending upwards. We range between 89 and 98% attendance, which again, trending in a positive direction. So with that, questions, concerns?
I have a question. One of the parents actually had a comment from one of our SOL students, and the gentleman said that he had been in communication, I think, with all of the people that are responsible for his son's education in that area, and they were all excited to get back to work. Is there a reason why we have to wait until October 26th to address this issue? I think that this is something we should be looking at immediately if we have teachers willing to come and teach. So is there a reason why we can't do that, Griff?
Kyle, would you like to respond to that? Kyle's been working feverishly to make this happen as soon as possible, Jeremy. This is something that is our number one priority, and I'm sure he can give you more of the specific reasons. Unmute.
I tell myself I'm not going to be that guy. I think I might have misheard you, but just a correction. We're looking at those self-contained programs being October 12th, not the 26th. The 26th is what Griff was referring to for that modified hybrid. Logistically, there's a lot to work out when it comes to being able to bring our students back in. Everything from the transportation piece to what type of schedule we would run. If we run a longer day schedule, we accommodate for lunch, and so then we're looking at spaces that we can utilize within the building. We're looking at staffing. Do we have the staff available to be able to operate these programs, whether it be classroom teachers or paraprofessionals? That's probably the biggest piece that we have to figure out. Yeah, it's just getting everybody around the table, making it as collaboratively as we can, from the people that support those programs all the way up through administration, to make sure that we are very thoughtful with how we do it. But I do agree with the sense of urgency of making this happen for our students as soon as we possibly can.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I was saying more along the lines of it being in alignment with a quarter or some sort of an arbitrary time, to do this. I think we should do it when we're ready. And that's my opinion. I know I don't speak for the entire board, but these people are clearly desperate for this type of interaction, and I'm no expert, but I don't think they would come down here if this wasn't entirely necessary. and I don't see any reason, if we have teachers and the facilities to do it, we shouldn't do it as soon as we're ready. So I guess that was more the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're working with everybody that is involved as far as stakeholders to try and make that happen. Really, the reason we targeted October 12th, which is earlier than what we were looking for the modified hybrid, equity. So we know these students need to be back in and need to have access to those in-person therapies and instruction. And so we want to prioritize that and do it on a timeline that we think we can make it happen. So it'd be great if we come back around the table and start talking about early October, but I think realistically October 12th is our target date.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the info.
Yep.
And Jeremy, everybody is on the same position you're taking. We need to bring them back as soon as possible. And at this point, everybody involved has set that target date of October 12th. And I wish it was earlier, but that's at this point, we feel realistic.
Can I jump in real quick while Kyle is still here?
Absolutely, David.
So that I'm clear, going into the school year, there seemed to be a little hesitation from our instructors teaching special education. Has that narrative shifted now? Are teachers ready to go into the schools and provide the learnings that are necessary?
Excellent question. There is some reticence among the staff regarding in-person learning and teaching and learning. Would you want to expand on that, Kyle?
Yeah, no, I would agree. As you can imagine, there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of emotion tied up in, having these discussions and these decisions. So I do think that by involving all staff that are going to be a part of these programs, it's helping us work through that, some of that anxiety. The other piece too we have to look at is which staff members could potentially be taking a leave for various reasons, medical, family, things like that. So we have to factor that into our staffing projections as well.
Does that answer the question, David? You're muted.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I guess
I'm good. It's just that I knew that there was a lot of hesitation going in. And so, the statement was just made that given that we have the proper coverage and the proper manpower, we want to be able to serve this population.
As many as we can, anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
Any other questions, comments?
No, I just want to say I appreciate what you guys are up against, and I know that it's easy to sit up here and say, hey, let's just do this tomorrow. So I do appreciate it. I just wanted to understand what was working around the timeline. So I do appreciate the information.
Yeah, absolutely, and we appreciate that sentiment, and a lot of people, administration on down, are working really hard at it, so we'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, it should really be easy for you after this, right? Your first year.
Trial by fire, I guess, yeah.
Exactly, right? Yeah. Thank you, anyway.
Yep.
Anything else? Next topic, the laundromat.
Yes. City of DeKalb Ordinance 2020-055, amending Chapter 38, Intoxicating Liquors, Section 38.07, Classification of Liquor Licenses, by adding a new classification of laundromats. This is a discussion information item.
The mayor told me this morning, we had a meeting with our Facebook representative, that the city postponed any action on this item until they got feedback from this Board of Education. And at this point, is my understanding, this board has never discussed this in a public setting. And this is a public meeting item. And we need to give it an idea. I need to give what the consensus of the board is to the city representatives. So this is something I know you've been informed of by the prior superintendent, but it was never an agenda item, as far as I know, for the entire board to weigh in on. So.
All right, bring me back up to speed real quick. I didn't get to this one. Yeah. Is this essentially us saying that we think it's okay for laundromats to have liquor licenses?
Right, and the issue is it's relatively close to our middle school. And I think that's why the city asked the board, what is do you have any concerns regarding the laundromat having a liquor license, correct?
And so what the current ordinance says, it can't be 100 feet, is that?
I think that's the ordinance.
According to the law, and I have the law right here, it says that no license shall be issued for the sale at retail of any alcoholic liquor within 100 feet of any church, school, or other institution. So right now, that was the question. Initially, it was presented to us, not at a board meeting, but through an email, that it was within 50 feet. But now he came back and said it's within 100 feet, if that's correct.
It's definitely more than 50 feet. I think it's... Yeah. Are you talking about the one next to Dollar General and Leanne's down there? Is that the one we're talking about? Yeah, that's easily 100 feet, I'll bet. I mean...
Well, what are the measurements? I mean, do we know? We should have that.
We should have that information, and we don't. And so we need to be very clear about that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we could vote that if it meets those guidelines, we are not in disagreement, right? But the city would have to obviously make sure that that was within code.
That makes sense.
So I guess we need more information.
What, just the distance, you mean?
I mean, honestly, for me, even if it's 150 feet, hypothetically speaking, I still don't feel comfortable. It's right next to Huntley, and I just don't feel comfortable with liquor being sold right next to a middle school.
Right, I agree with that, Val, as well. I guess I'm just wondering, is there, what is it exactly are they asking of us to do? I mean, they're asking for our approval to change the ordinance, or?
They want you to weigh in whether you are comfortable with a laundromat selling alcohol next to your middle school. That's really what they're asking.
No.
No?
No, I'm not comfortable with that.
Oh, you're disagreeing with what they're asking. No, that's...
This is Jim Mason's Mega Grande Laundromat?
Yes.
I'm still very much like Jeremy. Is this about selling within the distance of a school, or is this about allowing laundromats to sell liquor?
It's more about the connection to school. From the way I read the issue, if the laundromat was not near the school, they would not be asking you as a school board to weigh in on it.
I mean, that makes sense. But, I'm not in support of it being near a school. We're a college town. The last thing we need is really another liquor space. So why have them here? We got enough.
Absolutely.
So, okay, David is a no, Val's a no, I'm a no, Sam?
I don't think we're voting, are we?
Now, I just need a consensus.
Yeah, we're getting
What the purpose of the board is. It's an action item, but they would like feedback. I could bring it back if you want to actually have a formal vote on it. I could bring it back in October.
No, I think it's ridiculous too. I mean, you don't want drunk people coming out of the laundromat when you got kids walking around. So that's my feeling on it.
So that's 4. Sam, did you want to weigh in?
I guess I don't think it makes sense to have alcohol that close, but I don't know how close are the other places that sell alcohol to our schools, such as Twins or the other gaming place on South 4th Street, and are those selling alcohol during school hours? Like the laundromat would be selling alcohol during school hours, correct?
Correct.
So do we have any of that information?
Well, I guess students can't go into the Twins without parents because it's a bar, and the other place is like a gambling, specifically set aside for gambling, so kids couldn't go in there. But the laundromat,
that's true.
You can go in, no matter what age you are.
That's very
true. I wonder how they would even enforce that. That's sort of bizarre.
I
don't think comfortable as a whole.
Does the laundromat on campus, does anybody know, the one that's in the Junction area, does that place have booze? I'm just curious.
No booze there.
The laundromat here has booze, has liquor.
Okay.
We could change the ordinance to allow laundromats to do it. So there is no laundromat with alcohol, from the way I read it.
Oh, I gotcha.
Okay.
All right, so, okay. We have a consensus that we don't think,
You don't think it's in the best interest of our students?
No, we don't.
Okay. That's all I needed.
Okay, wonderful. And so on that note, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. We need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Samantha McDavid.
Yes.
Sarah Moses.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Jeremy Olson.
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
David Seymour.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie and David.
Yep.